Today we're playing Bus Simulator 21. For some reason, Bus Simulator started showing up in my recommended videos, and I started thinking about them more, and I decided I want to give Bus Simulator 21 a try, because I like American Truck Simulator, and there's something about driving a bus that just seems really cool. Partly because I remember having really fond memories of riding a bus in the Seattle area, and it was just sort of a therapeutic experience. You have a period of time waiting for the bus to come, and then you get on the bus and you sit there, and it's not really a social experience, but it is a shared experience, and it's a mixture of being active and also being passive. You're going somewhere, and so it's sort of exciting. There's a level of anticipation there, and yet there's not really anything for you to do, so you're just sort of in a state of rest. Maybe you take a little nap, or maybe you listen to some music, or you watch something on your phone. But it's just sort of a nice in-between kind of a space. And it's a way to enjoy the peacefulness of the city, to appreciate the beauty of it without actually having to do anything. From a gaming perspective, as a fan of the truck simulator games, I've also thought about how, as much as I like those games because they are sort of a long-haul driving simulator, they can be a little bit boring because there's not really much to do other than just drive down the road for a while. And that's actually one of the things I like about them. They're really fun as just sort of a passive, you drive down the road and, you could spend hours just driving down the highway in American Truck Simulator or ETS2. But in a bus simulator, it's a really different kind of a gameplay experience because you're actually focused on running a route. You're focused on potentially delivering a good experience to your passengers. You're focused on making stops correctly, and it's a very interactive experience. There's also something to be said for the fact that when you model a city, as Truck Sim 21 does, there's more detail. There's more things that make the city feel alive versus a game like American Truck Simulator, which tries to approximate entire states and geographic regions. It's not that ATS or ETS2 aren't beautiful. It's just they're trying to represent such a large area. The level of detail in any one place is somewhat lower. So being able to experience just the ambience of being in the city and being on a bus is pretty cool, especially when you add to it the fact that you can see the passengers. When you pick up cargo, well, the cargo is your passengers, you can see them getting on and off. It really feels like you're actually doing something. And then you can get out of the bus, you can walk around, or as is the case here while I'm making this video, I'm not even driving the bus. I'm just sitting on one of my routes as a passenger while one of the NPC drivers navigates a route which I've created. And if I wanted to, I could totally just get off the bus and go roam the city. And I think that's really, really cool to be able to do that. So I've had a pretty good time playing American Truck Simulator, and I've been thinking about how it's actually kind of interesting. I didn't have this game on my radar until I saw there is a new bus simulator by the same developers that made this one on the horizon, and I started thinking, well, I'd like to give it a try. And then I realized they've already been making bus simulators, and the one that is currently out is certainly not a bad one at all. So I thought, I think I'll get into that and shake things up a little bit to change the formula from the normal American Truck Simulator that I tend to play a lot for my driving game itch. But it got me to thinking about all of the time that I spent in the city riding buses and just enjoying the presence of the city living and doing its thing around me. And I still love that feeling of going out in the city at night and just kind of getting lost in the peaceful ambience of it all. And there's cars going around places and people going around different places. And, it's just really cool to be in a place that feels optimistic and beautiful, where you're sharing a space, but even if you're a little bit solitary or alone with just your thoughts, you're still in a place where you can see other people around you. That's pretty cool. In any case, I always make these videos about something philosophical, and this one will be no different. Today I want to talk about this whole phrase that we use a lot, I don't have time. And what that phrase really means is, I don't care. The truth of the matter is, you're going to encounter a lot of people in your life who say that they don't have time for something. And you're going to probably be one of those people sometimes, or you have been. But the reality is, whether you're telling someone else that, or you're telling yourself that, or you're trying to rationalize it when someone else tells you that, the truth is, we always have time for the things that we care about. That's the simple truth of life. If you care about something, you're going to make time for it. And people will say they don't have time for their loved ones, or they don't have time for their friends, or they don't have time to go do something, or they don't have time for their kids, or whatever it might be. But the reality is, everyone has time for what they choose to make time for. Maybe we don't have time for things because we're ashamed of them. We don't have time because if we were going to make time for those things, we'd have to acknowledge that they're important to us. And acknowledging that they're important to us makes them unimportant. Sort of like the disciple who denied that he knew Jesus in the Bible. He said, I would never deny you, Jesus. And then when Jesus got into trouble, suddenly he did not know Jesus, he said. I think that was the Apostle Peter, if I'm not mistaken. In any case, he was a loyal follower until things got tough, and then he didn't know him. He didn't know Jesus at all. Sometimes we don't have time for things in our life because we don't want to put ourselves out there. We don't want to stick our neck out. We don't want to risk our reputation or risk our ego or risk our convenience. And so we don't have time because sacrifice might be involved if we acknowledged that something was important to us. More often than not, though, we try to fit a lot of things into our lives, and then we don't have time because we have a preconception of what we're supposed to be making time for in our lives. And that idea doesn't leave any room for extra things that weren't on the list. Take this game, for example. This game I'm playing right now, I really enjoy it. I didn't even realize that this was gonna be that cool of a game. And then I played it for a few hours. And that's not a big deal. But the reason why it's worth mentioning is because there's so many games that are on my list. Games that I've said, I want to finish them. I need to get around to them. I need to spend more time playing those. And then I don't actually spend that much time playing them because I don't really like them that much, right? And it's easy to say, well, I don't have time to play them, but the reality is they're just not that sticky. I don't really like them that much. And it's not that I never liked them. Maybe I did like something about them. Maybe there is something amazing about them. It's just they're not really sticky anymore right now. And we can say, I just didn't have time to get around to it. But is that the truth? Because chances are we have time to scroll Reddit, we have time to watch YouTube videos, we have time for all kinds of other things, right? So see, it's not really about not having time. It's about not caring about things. But we lie to ourselves and we say that we don't have time. So every time you think to yourself that you don't have time for something, every time you hear someone else say that they don't have time, try to make a point to replace that phrase, I don't have time, with what it actually means. I don't care. And if it's coming from someone else, then ask yourself this question. Why would I spend my life, my energy, on someone who doesn't care? Sure, I know it's tempting sometimes to invest energy into things we want, but would you invest a lot of energy into a dead tree by always coming back to water it over and over again? Or would you acknowledge that if it hasn't borne fruit or had leaves for years, it's dead, and no amount of watering it is going to change that? The reality is, if someone doesn't care, no amount of you trying to convince them to care, no amount of you trying to employ a different strategy is going to make them care. Because if someone is dead inside, that's going to come out in their everyday actions and behaviors and all of the fruit that they bear. And it's okay. Sometimes something good just runs its course, and you have to accept that there was that game you loved and you played it for many hours, but you don't really need to play it anymore because it's done all of the good in your life it's going to do. And so you relegate it to memory as something that you've loved, something that you've enjoyed, and something that's in your past. Or maybe the lesson is all about learning to have time in your life, to be open and free to embrace new things. Because the truth of the matter is, I didn't have a problem sinking a few hours into this particular game I'm playing and discovering it for the first time and having a great time getting familiar with the world of it, because I didn't really have a full day. I didn't have a backlog of things on my list that I have to play. I didn't have a bunch of to-do list items that had to come first before I could make time to do something I wanted to do. I wasn't worried about sinking some money into buying the game because, you know what? I haven't even been going on vacations lately. If I went on a vacation, I'd pay probably a few hundred or a few $1,000s to go somewhere for a week. So if I want to sink some money into a game because it looks cool right now, that's okay. I'm going to do it because that's my hobby. And am I committing my life to it? Am I going to say, you know, this is going to be my main and only game till the end of time? No, I'm not saying that either. I might put a lot of hours into this game, and if I enjoy it, I might put a lot more than I expect into it. But that doesn't mean that I'm selling my life to it. I'm selling my soul to it, right? And I think that's important, to look at life and do things mindfully. Do things with a willingness to be committed to them, but also be flexible. Because when we have rigid expectations of life, when we think life has to be a certain way, and if it doesn't wind up going the way we want, then we're like an ant that lost its trail. Or if we have an idea of something that we need to make happen or make work, then we keep returning to that and beating our head against the wall, trying to make something work that really just isn't meant to be. Let go of the things that you say you don't have time for because really you just don't care about them. Let go of the people who say they don't have time for you when really the truth is they don't care. You see, really we should just be appraising things to see of what sort they are. Are they of high value or are they of low value? Do they bring joy into your life? Do they add a sense of calm, a sense of comfort in the storm? Or do they contribute to a spirit of chaos that doesn't do you any good? We tend to hang on to a lot of old baggage all the time. Sort of like the drawer full of extension cords and odds and ends that we think one day maybe we're going to need those things. The reality is our lives get filled with junk. And we have this false sense of commitment to it. We always think, well, you know, can't throw that stuff away because one day I might need it. I saw this silly meme a while ago that said that there was a guy who was excited because he, had stored a block of wood for the one time when it would be needed, and finally it was actually needed. Like how often does that happen? You save all kinds of odds and ends and little things that one day are going to be useful, and then they just sit there in a pile of forgotten things waiting for one day when you're going to actually use them. Just let them go. Because when we hang on to things that don't serve any purpose or use in our life, then our life gets cluttered. And we're so busy trying to manage the clutter that we don't have time for things that are new, for things that will potentially add value and quality and do good in our lives. And then I think, to go full circle, because this is a video, after all, about Bus Simulator, which is the game that we're hanging out in tonight, it's all about finding things that add a sense of peace to our life. I think a lot about how I used to enjoy playing games that were competitive, or I used to like things that were, maybe super realistic, or in the case of MMOs, games that had a really realistic economy. Always had something about the game that I was looking at that would be all about meeting an objective in the game. And now I really gave up on that. Now I play games based on the environments that they have. I play them based on how they make me feel. I play them based on how beautiful the worlds are, the design of the game, the storytelling of the game. Is it something that makes me feel inspired? Is it something that I want to immerse myself in and just be present with? And if the answer is yes, then that's going to be where I spend my time. Kind of like riding a bus. It's not that it's any kind of fireworks display, it's just about being present. It's about being right where you are and taking in the sights and the sounds and the ambience of the world and being at peace with it and at peace with yourself, exactly as you are, exactly as it is, to accept life just as it is, as a thing of beauty and a thing of majesty, without having any particular expectation of any outcome or a determination that you're going to accomplish a specific thing. When we do that, then we can start to live our lives in the spirit of that saying, life has loveliness to sell, so buy it and never count the cost. If something is bearing the fruit of loveliness, then invest in it for as long as it continues to bear fruit. It's just that simple. And if we lived our lives by that standard, we only did things we believed were lovely, and we only consumed things that we thought of as being beautiful. If we spent our life by that standard, then, wouldn't life be pretty good? I think so. That's why I find myself increasingly not watching movies, not watching TV shows, not watching the news, not watching politics, just learning to be at peace with my life, at peace with the world as it is. And in my spare time, I immerse myself in things which are encouraging and which encourage me to let go of all of those earthly things, which turn out to be often weights around our neck, veiled in promise. Stop paying so much attention to how good people look and start being mindful of what good they are doing in your life and their life. And, if something doesn't bear good fruit in your life, then just let it go. And spend your time just being. Someone said, if you can live a life for one day which is spent doing absolutely nothing productive, absolutely nothing purposeful, a day which is completely at peace, without any agendas or objectives, then you will have lived a good day. And the more I live, the more I think that that's true. It's all about letting life be a garden that you live in. And as with all gardens, you would never go to the garden and demand that it grow faster or be more than what it is. It's about the peace of just being there. As always, good luck on your adventure. Till next time, thanks so much for watching.